My guest today, in many ways, showed me what a player development coach in Winnipeg could be. Jon Giesbrecht is now a full-time assistant coach with the women's basketball program at the University of Regina. He gained some reputation in breaking down film with the smallest of nuances on the technical and tactical side of the game, but recently has shifted his focus into much more the mental side of the game. And we discussed the reasons behind this transition, some of the activities that he goes to get himself into peak mental state, and why he went from going to bed at 3 in the morning to now waking up at 5. I really enjoyed this conversation. There's a ton of gems in it, and I look forward to future conversations with Jon, as he is still someone that I learn from every time that we communicate. I hope you guys enjoy. Here is a conversation with Jon Giesbrecht. I am now joined with the man with either the best or second best beard in basketball Manitoba, Jon Giesbrecht. Good, Jon, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on your show here.
So, just as a point, between you and Zach, who do you think has the better beard?
Man, I think Zach's got me at this point. I mean, he's been working on it for a long time, and I've been putting different things, man. I've been putting like olive oil and like just trying to get it as soft as I can. So to me, it's more about quality versus quantity, I guess.
Yes, he is the volume battle going on.
Yeah.
So for those, I don't know if there'd be anyone in my kind of outreach that doesn't know who Jon is. Jon is someone who kind of, at least in my opinion, paved the way for someone like myself to really take player development seriously. He's a few years older than myself and has worked with University of Winnipeg, University of Manitoba, and is now a full-time assistant with the University of Regina Women's team, correct?
That's right. Yep.
So with everything that's going on right now, what's kind of a typical day in the life of a full-time assistant coach?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've kind of shifted and tried to make a lot of our stuff virtual. So we started with just trying to provide online content to our own players, and then also having content for, like the junior cougars, like the younger players that we have.
Yep.
And then also, I guess it's been about recruiting. It's always about recruiting. So I'm just constantly just messaging, different kids all over the world to see if they want to play for us. And yeah, so it's really about player development, recruiting. And, those are two things. I mean, recruiting, I don't have a lot of experience with, but the player development stuff I've been doing for quite a long time. So it's also something I enjoy doing. And it's strange, man. It's different, right? Like, just like with everybody else, man, we're all going through it, and we're all trying to figure it out as we go.
And well, I guess one of the adjustments would be just as coaches, we're always used to kind of the next competition. And right now that's just kind of, it's delayed out into the future. In terms of player development, the questions I asked you, and I know you've read the book or are reading the book recently of The One Thing. I asked you about, like, what do you think is like the one most like underappreciated skill that goes on in player development?
Yeah, and I've made a shift too. I think for me, it's more of a mental thing. It's about loving the game and having curiosity. Because that's your foundation. If you don't have that, ultimately, you're going to reach a point where people are just going to outperform you just because they love the game, and they're always about getting better. So even for U of R, I mean, even when we're recruiting, like, that's something that we value. Do you really love the game? Because once the academic starts and our schedule starts up, it can get pretty hectic and chaotic, man. And if you don't love the game, it can kind of be tough to stay with it.
That is an incredible answer. I love that. And you talked about your shift into kind of the mental side of things, and anyone that follows you knows that you're now well on your path of kind of personal development, kind of self-discovery, maybe a better term. What was the catalyst behind making that shift in perspective?
Yeah, there were a couple things. I mean, when I first got to Regina, I didn't really know anybody. So I was essentially living on campus by myself, on campus 24/7. So I had a lot of time in solitude to really think about my life and what I wanted to do. And listening to different audiobooks, listening to different speakers, listening to someone like Ram Dass, and kind of getting a greater perspective on where I was taking this thing, that kind of helped me make the shift. And then and other things too, I had a lot of really good conversations with athletes in terms of how I could help them. And a lot of it came down to more of the mental side of the game. And that's kind of what's, I guess, fascinated me to take more interest in myself. Because ultimately, if we're developing ourselves, I think then we have a better chance to help other people. We need to look within ourselves first before we start helping others. At least that's what I believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what would be some practical things, that maybe some daily habits that you do now to kind of get yourself into that state, or that has improved yourself in that way?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think I've been experimenting with different things to try to put myself in a peak state. And I started with like cold showers. I was doing that at like 5 a.m. every day.
Yep.
And then there was a little bit too much friction with that. I was kind of like, oh man, like I don't know if I want to jump in the cold shower today. So I took away the friction. I just started to go to the gym every day and lift every day, and do the cold showers at the gym. And then I was really into journaling and reading and meditating. So for me, it's kind of like a feel thing. And it's ultimately, I have a menu of things that I can do, that I know that if I do these things, I'm going to give myself a chance to put myself in that peak state. I don't have to do it every day, but I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I need to have some self-care time. And I usually try to hit that early in the morning. And 5 a.m., 5:30 has been the money for me. That's been a really good time to start my day.
And for that time of day, is that just there's less distractions kind of from the outside world at that point?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. I would say back in the day, like, I don't know, I guess I'm 28 now. So when I was like 21, 22, I would like stay up super late for that reason. So I'd stay up till like 3 a.m. and be like working on different projects and watching video. And I felt that was a good time where it was more quiet. But I've just found now, making the shift, for whatever reason, the mornings, I just feel better. I feel better than, waking up. I used to wake up at, 11 a.m., 12, at lunchtime. And this just feels a little bit healthier and helps me get some momentum, I guess.
Yeah, man, it probably aligns a little bit more with kind of the natural circadian rhythm and all that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And working now as an assistant with the women's game, obviously as a player development coach, you worked with both groups of athletes growing up. Is there things that you've learned from working more directly with like just high level female athletes that maybe you didn't with men?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the biggest difference is that this is full time, right? Like, it's not even, I wouldn't even say it's male versus female. The biggest difference for me has been being able just to really be invested and committed to something. I don't really ever have to worry about, where I'm at financially, because before I was doing it was always like that grind of running camps. And I didn't really have an idea. Like, just as I was getting out of it, I was just starting to figure out how to put together a business and make it sustainable. Because for me back in the day, it was just like, all right, like I'm just trying to just get enough money to pay for my classes so I can graduate here.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing, I guess, if you compare male versus female, I've really just taken a seat, taken a step back, I guess, and tried to listen more. I think back in the day, what I used to do is just try to push ideas on people and tell them what they need to do. And this is your path. But ultimately, like, I don't know what your path is. I don't know what you're up to and what you're doing. I don't know all the variables in play, but I'm going to be someone that can give you the space. If you need to come up for air, you can, and we can have a conversation. So I guess I've just kind of made a shift from like my way or the highway to, no, man, this is, if you want to do this and we're going to get this done, like ultimately it's going to be up to the player. So I don't know if that's, again, male versus female, but that's been one of my biggest takeaways by just being able to do this all in, full committed, full time, versus before kind of just, coaching all these random teams.
Yeah. No, and the only reason I ask is for the longest time, I never had like dealt with female athletes. And then I worked with Carrie Cusbett very intensely the last couple of summers, and she opened my eyes up to just the potential of the women's game. And as someone who I used to be kind of like, typical basketball who like I look down upon girls basketball, I'm now like a huge fan of it because I see the potential of where it has come in the last, let's say, decade and where it's going to continue to grow. Kind of last thing that I'm curious about, because I was going to ask you about the NBA playoffs and whatnot, and you honestly were like, I didn't watch too much of it, which is that's 100% understandable. Who are you watching right now, or what's your sources of film or player breakdowns? Where's the info coming from?
Yeah, so right now I've kind of made a shift. I think where I kind of started to build a reputation online was more through like technical, tactical player development. And I wouldn't say that I'm like out, like I don't want to do that anymore. It's more so I've just kind of shifted my interests. Like I feel like I can make a bigger impact if I really start to study the mental game.
Yep.
So I took a deep dive on Kobe Bryant, and I watched about 15 hours of interviews for him, just talking about business stuff, life stuff, basketball stuff. And essentially what I'm doing now is I'm just making, miniature videos, like the evolution of Kobe Bryant, his perspective change. And he was, I think, a little bit more transactional when he started. And then when he was getting out of it, he was a little bit more transformational. So those kind of things have made me curious about how I can start to help people. So I'm doing projects more like that. The other project I've got going on is, I think this is down the line, but it was working a little bit with Roy Rana, and we're doing the Canadian Coaches Association. I think that's what they're calling it. And I'm starting to put content together for him. And I'm just starting to dive into like specifically content featuring Canadians. So like, Kirby Shep with the Bisons, what are some things that he's been doing to be a successful coach, like just different Canadian coaches, Mike Rainbow, Scott Morrison with the Boston Celtics, just all these different kind of guys, and women too, for sure. Like Carly Clark at University of Ryerson. So just taking a deep dive with that. So yeah, for me, it's kind of just been a deep dive with more of the mental skills and how can I help these players? Because that's really when I talk to parents, when I talk to athletes, I'm sure it's the same for you. It's like, man, they need to help. We need to develop their confidence, like, and to me, I find that very fascinating when I'm getting that 95% of the time, when I'm asking those questions.
And again, great answer that I was not expecting. So I do appreciate that. Before I let you go, I've kind of been on a topic with people of things they're reading or people they're listening to. So what's your go-to kind of 2 or 3 things off the top of your head content-wise that you're consuming?
Yeah. So I've got like probably 15 books on the go. And I used to be like, I'd have people telling me like, finish the book from start to finish. But now I'm kind of more like just looking for concepts. So I'll just go through different books. The one book that has stood out for me is just reading Steve Jobs' biography by, I'm not sure who it's by, but that's been really cool for me just because I'm kind of starting my own little business with Hooper Meditations. And I'm, looking to see how he did it. How did he build Apple, and being inspired by that. A couple months ago, I was really into, connecting with athletes. So I just started to study Fred Rogers and his come up and how he was helping people. So I've been into that. I read, like you mentioned, The One Thing. I thought that was a money book. I think I've always kind of been a people pleaser. And by being a people pleaser, I wasn't getting my needs met, and I was unclear on my desires. So this whole solitude thing kind of gave me that chance to really think about, what do I want? what do I want to work on? And the whole idea with this one thing is, let's start to invest myself in and take it. So that the one thing was a great book. I can't remember the author.
Gary
who else?
Keller.
Yeah, that's right. Gary Keller. Naval. I can't remember his last name.
Is that Ravikant?
I think so. That might be it. He had a good Tim Ferriss, and he had one of his own called Getting Rich or something like that. And that just made me think differently about coaching and my own profession, and again, where I'm taking this thing. So at this point in my life, it's more about looking for direction. And because I just feel it's been kind of chaos. I've kind of been just coaching all these different teams and saying yes to every opportunity, which has been good. But at the same time, there's been times I know I haven't been my best self because I was just trying to take on too much.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm going to let you go. We're about at the time that I like to wrap these things up. Like I said at the beginning, Jon, I appreciate you kind of leading a path of something that I can follow in terms of profession. And now you're your transition into these the other side of the game, which is equally but probably more important in terms of how we develop our players going forward. So I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet, brother. Hey, I mean, you're one of the bright stars on the come up, man. So I'm excited for you as well. I think this is we're in this together. We're just two young dudes that are plugging away, that are super passionate, and I think we're both in it for the best of reasons. We're out here to help people, and so I'm inspired by you, and I appreciate you having me on your show again. This has been really cool to connect with you.
All right, Jon. You have a great rest of the day.